Hello, everyone. My name is Neha, and welcome to Dropping Your Armor, where we listen to stories from thinkers, doers, and dreamers, all in the hope of unlocking our infinite human potential. In this episode, you'll hear the story of Mansi Jasuja. She is such a phenomenal person who brings so much love, joy, humor, and color to everything she does. She's worked in different sectors, starting with architecture and then going into urban environmental management and working at international organizations such as the UN. She's a coach, she's a mother, she's an activist, and she brings all of that to her work at Conscious Business, which is a company dedicated to supporting businesses to adopt a more conscious approach that creates true prosperity and harmony for people, communities, and nature. As always, we started with exploring the rich tapestry of Mansi's life story and what put her on the path that she's on today. Against this backdrop, we examined conscious capitalism as a new system for doing business and discussed the ways in which organizations can adopt this approach. For me, this conversation was both insightful and uplifting, and I do hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So hey, Mansi, welcome to Dropping Your Armor. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me here.
I'm so glad you're here. There's so much I want to discuss with you because the first call with you was just so amazing. It got me thinking for many, many, many days after that. But before we do, maybe let's take a moment to introduce you to the listeners. So would you want to say a few words about yourself, who you are, what you do, and what's your mission in life?
Well, that's a tough one to begin with already. And even though I knew this would probably come, I didn't really prepare for it. But let's see. Well, I'm I'm a Sikh growing up in India who's been in the Netherlands since 20 years. So I'm quite a mixed DNA in that way. But in fact, I really don't like to name boundaries of countries. And I just say I'm a human being who loves working from my heart and reminding people how wonderful it is to be human and with all our failures and all our wonderful gifts that we have. So I love nature and joy and play and dancing and music and all the good things in life and also the not so good things. And I work with many different elements, a lot with people because I love people, working with trainings and facilitating processes. And last few years with Conscious Business, helping businesses transition. So I guess we'll be talking about it more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
perfect.
And maybe to add, I have two lovely children who are also mixed, half Dutch, half Indian, and they are literally, they are the joy of my life, of course.
That's lovely. Thank you for that intro. And we will, I mean, you know me now, I just sort of plunged into the hard questions and we will plunge into the big questions in this soon enough. But before we do, I wanted to start us off with a light check-in question. And for this conversation, I picked this one. So what's a trend that you're really glad went away or one that you wish would really, that one that you would really wish would go away?
Oh, I guess we could cover a whole podcast on this.
Yes.
But if I have to name one, let's say at the individual level, it would be the trend of weekend getaways, flying with the airplane to go in for weekend getaways. I really think COVID did us good with that, with cutting down those habits and trend. But I think at a broader level, it would be not working in silos anymore and really start to talk across different subjects and sectors, because I think that's really needed.
Yeah. Those are good ones. I also, when I was reflecting on it, thinking about it in terms of individual and also something a bit broader related to work. And for me, it was really, one is I am so glad this trend of updating, your life every half hour on social media is going away or gone, or maybe I don't know about it because I'm not that present on social media. So yeah, for me, I'm happy that that's sort of fading away and I don't have to see Facebook posts of people's lunches. But on a broader level, one trend that I wish would really go away is this conception of work as this 9 to 5, 40-hour thing that we do and very compartmentalized, right? This is what we do and this is what we work. And I also really loved your intro because of that, because you introduced yourself as a whole person, not just by what you do, but who you are. And I would love for work to be more a part of our life and not be this divide of work life and so on.
Yeah, that's so close to my heart. It's actually at the heart of what I do, just being human, uh, and not saying, now I'm at work, so now I'm somebody else, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I leave my empathy at home.
Yes. Yeah. So good. Yeah. All right. So I would be very happy if all four of those trends actually go away.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, let's talk about you and let's hear about your story. And I'm really curious to learn about where you grew up. What were some of the values and beliefs that were ingrained in you as a child early on, and how those evolved over time to where you are right now and the work that you do right now.
Wow, what again, a powerful question. And actually, I love this because most times when I have to introduce myself to people, I always tell a little story of who I am and where I'm coming from, because I think in that way, ancestral lineage is also very important. Not that I'm going to tell you that whole story, of course not. But I grew up in Delhi in a Sikh family with strong values around equity and justice and harmony and compassion, and sharing. So, Sikh community is very hardworking and, yeah, known for strong values. What stood up for me from a very young age was that while we were taught these values through our stories, through narrative of what was taught in school as well, I didn't really see it happening in practice to many levels. For example, I noticed the role of women is different, and while we are supposed to be equal, but my brother has other privileges than I do, and I think you probably recognize these things as well.
Yes, I'm
Um,
vigorously nodding as you're speaking because
yeah,
it connects so much to my
yeah,
experience.
yeah. But also across social classes, at a young age, I was warned not to play with children from people from a lower economic class. Of course, I did. My little rebellion was starting to happen already back then. Um, but I think what I remember the most is at the age of 4, already starting to notice all the garbage on the streets and notice all the pollution which is coming, and picking up the garbage and trying to find a place to place it. And I think that really was the start of me being an environmentalist and being conscious of how that the boundaries don't stop at your home. So we are a community, we are a society, and the garbage doesn't disappear just because you put it outside your home. And at that point, at a young age, I didn't notice it. I mean, I couldn't give words to it. But as I grew up, I became an architect because my family wanted me to be a doctor. So I became an architect, of course, which, which is very logical. Um, but that really opened up my mind to life, because architecture is so much about everything: poetry and history and art and structures and mathematics and society and culture, everything, and I think that's where I really learned to notice the patterns that exist across different sectors, and learning to appreciate that, how things weave into each other, into this big tapestry that is life. But still, I was very much, uh, brought up with this idea of success and safety. Coming from a country where there's not that much social security or safety, so you really have to work hard to get to a secure life. And I came to the Netherlands to study in my master's, urban environmental management. No surprise, environment was still very key in what I wanted to do, and started working internationally with organizations such as the UN, and pretty soon got very disillusioned with the way the work uh, was structured, the way the expectations were from people, the way hierarchy was very embedded, and bureaucracy, and So many things. Where to where to begin? But yeah, there were so many moments where my main question, which I was holding, was okay, who is this for? What am I working? Who is this helping? In India, I'd been working in slums, and we did a lot of work there. And I noticed how, despite not being really rich, people are super happy, But I also noticed the inequality, and I felt like, yeah, I need to do something to make it better for the world, for the women, for people, for children. How do we give them access to the same things I had access to? So I was sensing my privilege there. And in the end, I couldn't get those answers working in those organizations. So I had to
Mhm.
leave, which is another story. I wonder, I'm pretty sure you can link with this, relate so much with this, right?
Yeah, I absolutely can. In fact, just, what I find really fascinating is that you said that at a very young age, you could see uh, the disparity in what we say and what we do, and the values that we're brought up with, and how the world around us works. And that it also makes me wonder, because one of my earliest memories as a child is also accompanying my mother to, I don't remember, it was a bank or maybe a passport office, something, but something official, where she was asked to write down her husband's name in the application form, but my dad wasn't asked to write down his wife's name. And I was just like, why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. If why do you as a woman have to write down your father's name or your husband's name? It made no sense to me, but it was accepted. And my mother, like, she recognized that there is this inequality, but she had accepted it. So I love the from your story, I love that childlike sense of, you know, pure justice and equality that we're born with. We're not born with that feeling of, hey, I'm different from you or I'm better than you. It's sort of something that happens to us as we grow up. But you held on to that. You held on to that feeling of, hey, this is not right. This is something is off here, and the world is not as it should be.
Yeah, for it was at so many different levels, right? We named the social, economic, access, but it was also, I was told repeatedly, not by my immediate family, but society saying, "Oh, you're too brown, you're too dark, so you're not beautiful," or "You're a woman and girl, so you're less deserving." And I think the warrior in me was just woken up from this. I mean, Sikhs are warriors, right? So,
Yes.
and I thought that's not right. That's not okay. You cannot say that. We are all equal. And yeah, just stayed with me, and I realized that okay, then I would like to be countering these beliefs, and I want to do my best to make people around me not feel that way.
Yes. And that's something that has continued on, right? When you started to work and you found that the work cultures around you, even in very reputable organizations that are out there to do good in the world, it
Especially in
especially in
some of
those.
those. Well, I still remember I was looked down upon in the UN because I was very friendly with all the secretaries, and I knew the names of the cleaners and the other associates of mine. They just didn't understand. And I think my position, my social position dropped because of that.
Oh,
Um, and I sensed it, but I didn't care. It was a bit hard.
yeah. And well, what gave you that strength? I mean, because I can also imagine when there's so much against you and there are people telling you from the people who surround you at work or in your culture, are trying to enforce certain expectations of you, and but in your heart that something is not right or something is very right and that you need to follow that. What gives you the strength to keep fighting against that current and swimming in the direction that you feel is right for you?
I think it's probably a combination of things. I can probably give most of my credit to my DNA, which I can't take credit for. I come from a family of very strong women, but also men who fought for their values and their rights. So our childhood was full of stories from our own family where people worked for this equality and rights and justice. So I had good role models within my family who also supported me. which gives you then that confidence to stand, because we are not individual creatures. You need to have your tribe. And I still say that at this moment also, everybody needs to go out there and find their tribe, find their community to support them. If you don't get it from your family or from your current work or space, I think it cannot be one individual who does this alone. So I was supported, but I also was luckily confident enough to just stand there and say, I am here, I exist, I can do it the way I like to do it. So a bit of stubbornness.
Yeah, that goes a long way, right? And I guess the knowing that your family, that you come from a family that would ultimately appreciate that courage, it probably also gives a lot of strength. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell me about, so we stopped at, you were at the UN, and there were, of course, you noticed a lot of inequality in an institution that is supposed to create a more just world. What drove you to then move forward and get into conscious capitalism, creating conscious business? What was the story from there on?
Well, maybe I can talk about 2 or 3 incidents which sort of are moments in this journey. Of course, I always say there are a million decisions I made which led me to this particular thing I'm doing, but a couple of key moments stand out for me. And I think the first one would be my first day of work at the UN. This is way back at the United Nations in Bangkok. And my boss, he took me out for lunch and he sat me down and he says, Mansi, you're starting your new career, so you need to choose an approach for it. And you can choose to dazzle them with your brilliance, or you can baffle them with bullshit. and and he said, well, 99% of the people here fall in the latter category. And that was like such a moment for me where I thought, oh my God, this, it's like the scales fall from your eyes. And being an idealist, I thought, yeah, that can't be right. So I set out for the next 10 years working internationally, looking for that meaningful work, looking for that human centeredness and connection. And I didn't find it. So disillusionment didn't happen in one moment. It was me trying in many spaces to find that, and finding I don't belong here. It doesn't fit me. And so at some point, and that's like the second incident, where being an environmentalist, I knew a lot of the data of the climate data, what's going on. But at some point, it entered my soul. And that was the start of a period of deep anxiety and grief for the planet. And there was no term for it, which I knew at that time, but now I know it's known as eco grief. And I talk more and more openly about it. It took me many years to open up about also this many months of darkness and grief, really. And that was a turning point for me. And I think when I read about a lot of conscious leaders and purposeful leaders, I really notice how crisis is often something which drives them towards purpose. Well, unfortunately. But so for me, this was the crisis which started, okay, I need to make a change. I cannot go on working in this way. I stepped out of that anxiety with a very strong purpose and a North Star saying, like, yeah, this is where I want to go. I still went really chaotic for many years until I heard in a very nice conference in Rotterdam, Raj Sisodia, who is the co-author with John Mackey of Conscious Capitalism. And I had been trying to be a conscious consumer for a really long time by that time. And I had nothing to do with business. I didn't at all think I would ever be working in a business scenario. But hearing Raj, something moved in me. And I really, he talked about how a business can only be as conscious as its leaders. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it struck me, what if we can just help a lot of business leaders change? Then they have such power and influence on their companies and businesses, and business is such a strong force in our economic system. It was somehow an invitation for me to step into that space, which literally was an invitation by Raj and some other people as well. And so started our conversations within the Netherlands on how can we start a chapter on conscious capitalism in the Netherlands. I can tell you in a while a bit more about it. And we set it up not as conscious capitalism, but as conscious business, which resonated more in terms of name, but also in the way we want to transform business here with a group of people, including the Impact Center Erasmus and many other amazing people who are part of this journey, not in Holland, not only in Holland, but also in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I would love to know a little bit more about that, and I have a lot of questions about that. But before we get into that, I was struck by your account of your time in the UN, right? That you sense this general apathy towards the environment, towards human beings working in that organization, and it's something that I always wondered. Also, partly because I was lucky enough to go from studying and land up in an organization that is very purpose driven. So I don't see why you would have an alternate model where it's just about extracting value and it's just about, going through the motions and making profit. And I just don't, I guess I understand it logically, but I don't feel it in my heart. I don't understand it deep inside how that would be the case. And I'm just curious to hear your view on why is there this general apathy towards the environment, towards people, towards and this deep sense of self-interest and above other people's needs and above the society's needs. Why does that exist in our society right now?
You really like asking difficult questions, right?
I'm sorry about that. I know. I really
do. Well, where could one begin? It could be capitalism. It could be the move to individualism. It could be trauma coming from all the scarcity that human beings have faced for the past so many hundred years. And while capitalism has brought a lot of value and a lot of increase in life quality and support for women, women's abilities and their position in society, it has also brought with it this inequality, growing inequality between rich and poor, and that just makes it harder for people to survive. And I think when people are in a survival mode, and there's always this threat hanging above them of, okay, if I don't have enough money, I'm not really going to make it, and there's all going to be all that suffering. Then people don't have time to think at a broader level and for each other. If you're stuck in survival mode, you're stuck in that. You cannot think in a systemic kind way.
Yeah.
And I think our societies and our governance systems have just brought us to this.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but that seems to me a critical part of it,
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
And that's that was also my hunch, right? That's when I look at capitalism as a system, it has a lot of merits, right? The philosophy, the principles behind the free market, the choice that people have in their lives and in bringing prosperity to themselves and the world around them, that is all great. But I feel like fundamentally there is this disregard for exactly what you said, for people who are below the poverty line or who are not in a state where they can really that they have the capabilities to contribute to a society that's set up that way. It's completely unjust, right? They don't necessarily have the freedom. It's only on paper. You have freedom when there's development. There's this book by Amartya, right? Development as Freedom, which is just amazing, very difficult read, but brilliant. But that's the piece of capitalism that I was always missing, that there's the freedom in itself happens when people are, they have that opportunity and they are developed, and it's not that they are expected to exercise freedom when they're below the poverty line fighting for their survival. That doesn't work, right?
And I think there's another important piece here, which is one is in our our move towards effectiveness and being efficient, because that's what capitalism and industrialization is a lot about, right? Let's make it effective, let's scale up. And that worked at that time, like 200 years back. It was fine. But at some point, what that effectiveness, and that's also the silos, and that's also, everybody just focused on their own little piece. What it brought us is well, one of my favorite world leaders, thought leaders at this moment is Charles Eisenstein, and he talks about the story of separation, separation, and he, when, and there are more people talking about it. It just alienates human beings from each other, from the nature, and we are not, and if we feel not connected to nature, we don't see the impact of our actions around us, and it's becomes like the jungle law, survival for yourself. But actually, even in jungle, there's a very wonderful harmony. The way things move, things are interconnected. And so I think the narrative which we have been brought up with, which have been told, needs to be changed. And maybe some simplicity and more interconnectedness needs to be brought into the education, into the stories that we tell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then tell me about conscious capitalism, and how does that change the narrative that is currently predominant?
Taking it from the business perspective, of course, business being a very strong force in the world, part of the bigger system, we believe that business has the power to elevate humanity, which is the core purpose of conscious capitalism, as we call it, conscious business here. And the four tenets, the four pillars of conscious business are higher purpose, conscious leadership, conscious culture, and stakeholder inclusion. And when you look at it, it's really a holistic business model, which is there. Everything is in it. So it's really looking at, let's say, purpose, which is the why. Why do you exist? Just like a human being, a conscious leader, I think purpose is at the core of a human being. We talk about the ikigai of individuals. I think it's the ikigai of an organization. And the purpose, higher purpose, is so important. Why did the business come into being? It cannot be just to make money. That cannot be the goal. I mean, the goals of our life is not to earn a salary. That's not why we exist. So it's remembering, like, what's your true star. So we help businesses remember this, like, why do you exist? And the profit is a means to an end. It's not the end to itself. Then we move to conscious leader, and like I said, like Raj said, also a business is only as conscious as its leaders. And leadership is very much, again, purpose driven, coming from the heart. It involves values of appreciation and gratitude for other people who are working with you. It's keeping your eyes on the purpose of the whole community or the organization as a whole. There are also many other values which a conscious leader hold, and that can be another conversation. But I actually think leadership is at the core of it all. Leadership and purpose is a nice dance together, and then that forms the culture. And the culture is very much around when you have employees or people who look forward to going to work. They know that it's not just a 9 to 5 thing. The purpose of the organization very well. You are aligned with that purpose. They have good balance in their work and life, or integration, or whatever you call it. You have happy and engaged people, because happiness is so important. With it's really. I think it's at the core also of having a good conscious culture, having fun, because I think fun is just taken out of our workplace, right? Oh, you are at work now, so you've got to be super serious. I really struggled with that also in all my jobs, and I just thought, but why do we have to keep humor out of this, or play? You need play for innovation. You need fun. You need that happiness, and then, yeah, just giving employees a chance to express themselves. It's about trust. Just it. You work in such an organization, I believe. So You know how it is. And finally, and this is, I think, one of the most interesting piece, is the stakeholder inclusion, because knowing that your business is not just limited to the number of stakeholders that you most obviously see, your primary stakeholders, which is most businesses do think about that, your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your service providers, but or your investors, your shareholders, but actually going beyond that and really looking at, hey, are the communities in which we operate part of it? Is the environment a stakeholder? Because it is. So when you start looking at it in this way, and you start saying, how can we operate in a way, how we can only achieve our purpose if we include our stakeholders with us, and then we reach a win-win-win scenario. And I think when a company starts to do work on any one pillar, it will start to reinforce the other pillars. And that's the magic of it also. You think you're only working on one thing, but actually you start to see results in other spaces as well. And there are examples of this from businesses where they had that. And yeah, that's, I think, the magic of conscious business.
Yeah. And what I really like about that model is that it's not, business is not seen as a, you win or you lose, like a zero sum game. It is connected. It is interdependent. You look at it like the whole system, as opposed to just one thing that you're going after, that I need to be profitable and I need to make more money. But it's about everything else that goes with it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And business is not linear, right? It's very systemic, and it's not about constant growth. So one thing which I didn't mention, but I think it's crucial within this thing, is the inclusion and diversity. So you need to include different voices of different people. That's the only way we can be part of a living system of community, and have a better future for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that when you start working on one of the tenets, the others sort of fall in line. Which ones would you start with? Would you just pick any of them, or from your
Yeah.
experience, would you start with one particular tenet?
Well, I think different businesses, looking at case studies which we have studied so far, or businesses we are working with, it can really start anywhere. Some businesses are busy with finding a purpose, but there you need conscious leadership in any way, because you can't move without that. But others start from the culture, and then they realize, oh, we need a purpose. We can't go further, because you realize you can only go so much with part of it, doing part of it. So you could go a long way and still have a great culture and atmosphere, but realize, okay, to make a real big impact, we need to start now being working with our stakeholders, because otherwise you get limited there. And some others, they start with, well, just to give you an example, there is the company NS, which is the railway company in the Netherlands. They have an agreement with another company called Webego, which does the cleaning of their trains. Now, Webego is a company which is very focused on its culture, and they want to have good arrangements for their employees, so their employees can have a good working conditions, right? So they told NS, yeah, this is not really good for our employees if they have to work late at night to clean the trains and go to like these faraway places, and it's not really working so well for us. So how can we find a solution together? Well, this is two stakeholders talking about, making life better for their own employees. And at the end, they came to a conclusion that, all right, why don't we use the what they call daluren, like when it's not so busy, the hours which are not peak hours, non-peak hours, to clean the train. So the cleaners would be coming in when it's less busy and cleaning while there are still some people traveling. Now, as such, it was a great solution, but some of the added magic that came with it, which they totally didn't count on, was the fact that the people who were traveling, once they saw other people cleaning, they littered less because they had more respect. Oh, somebody cleans it, it was more conscious, like in their
Yeah.
mind. And there was more safety because there were people coming in, keeping an eye on what's going on. There was less demolishing of properties because we all know there's research when things are clean and hygienic and green. People take more care of their environment.
Yes.
But also for the people who were cleaning, they got more appreciation. They got more contact from the other travelers. So they, yeah, also, if you would clean at night, you don't meet anybody. You don't even know why you're doing this and who is it helping. So it was such a beautiful little example.
And that's also something that really resonated with me was the role of conscious leaders in this whole thing, right? That's not just a tenet, it's actually more like even a foundation to have leadership that is willing and capable to make those choices, to lead in a more conscious way. And that's also something that I found with the work that we do with transformations. It's exactly what you said. An organization cannot evolve beyond its leaders. So you start with that, you start with the leadership and the mindset. And one of the questions that I have for you, and I would love to hear your stories in this regard, is how was your experience of working with leaders to help them see a different alternate view of business when, in fact, the current way business is set up might actually be very beneficial to the leaders at the top, right? Be it monetary benefit or power or prestige or whatever it might be. The way business is done at this moment really has a lot of pluses, let's say, for the leaders at the top. So, what has been your journey to change that, change people's minds, or help them see a different model and embrace conscious leadership more?
Well, to be honest, I'm yet to be working with a lot of business leaders at that level where I could have that kind of influence. But I have been working with a lot of young professionals and a lot of midterm professionals when I facilitate trainings on conscious leadership and I think in the end the transformation, you can only sow seeds. You can only sow seeds, and you can only do that by modeling that yourself. Uh, Change cannot happen because somebody else says you need to change.
Yes.
So this is a responsibility. It's an inner responsibility of everyone to find their purpose, to find their journey. Um, and I do it by trying to be conscious of the way I arrive in a space, by showing by using different tools, by promoting participatory leadership, where every voice is important. And well, for example, last week I was giving a speech at a business event, a CFO event, and I talked about conscious purpose and transformation, and I got a lot of response after that from on LinkedIn or people coming to me later and say, "Oh, I think we need a purpose. I need a purpose." Uh, so I just feel I've put a seed there, and it's their own journey now to actually find it. I cannot find a purpose for them. Well, maybe I can if I do the coaching for them, but it's everyone's own responsibility. But also, I think by asking powerful questions. So at some point, we were at the same event. I was outside having drinks at the end, and with two CFOs who knew each other for many years, and it was very much at a superficial level, the conversation. And at some point, I asked the question to them: "Tell me something you wouldn't tell a stranger." And it was amazing how the two of them first with it was just an invitation from me to share something. I had no expectations actually. But then they shared two really amazing, very personal, very vulnerable stories about
Mhm.
themselves, which they didn't know of each other as well. And What I realized later, it was amazing. And I was very grateful. And I told them, I'm so grateful that you shared it with me. I'm not going to share it here. But what I really realized is I just created space and I was just holding that space with asking that question. But the journey, the steps they had to make to open up uh, was their own. And I think that's the best we can do.
I love what you're saying that, the stories that we tell ourselves and to the world really have that power because, yes, human beings can have a very strong desire to survive and have developed self interest in that way, right? To accumulate more, to have that feeling of safety. But we do have an equally strong desire to have meaning in life, and that purpose is a very important part of our being. Um, that's actually that's actually what was one of the inspirations behind this podcast and calling it Dropping Your Armor, because with the conversations that I was also having with leaders, with their leadership teams, the moment you open a dialogue and ask people to share their story, the whole air in the room changes. It just completely shifts, and there's just so much more attention to us as human beings in this world around us, and not, as interconnected beings, as opposed to, hey, this is me on my island and I need to prove something. It just completely changes the entire dynamic, and it's so beautiful. So I'm really connecting with what you're saying about storytelling, and I know you did some work on the art of conversation, and how storytelling actually helps people to open up. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience there?
I think you're referring to the art of hosting and
The art of
harvesting.
hosting, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
it's quite a mouthful, the whole term. It's the art of hosting and harvesting conversations that matter. Yeah, that was a one of those life-changing things for me to become part of this community. It's actually known as the art of participatory leadership, very much around collective intelligence and co-creation. And I did a couple of trainings in there last years, and I realized how powerful this thing is for somebody who's been sort of running away from hierarchy the whole life and bureaucracy. This was like the world I wanted to be in, and I saw how it is being applied in every dimension of our life, whether it's in health or in education or in business. If you look at teal organizations, they are also about self-managed, and that's very much using participatory leadership to manage and run their teams or their organizations. And yeah, I'm really super enthusiastic about it, and I think this is one of the ways we need to work. It's actually, I think, probably the core way to power up conscious business, because every conversation we have needs to be participatory, needs to be inclusive, needs to be uh, having the voice from all stakeholders. Uh, and to do that, you really cannot sit in a structure which is the way we have been sitting in, with one speaker speaking to you and the other people just listening. Because I believe every time we meet, there's so much intelligence in the room.
Yes.
How can we harvest that? How can we harness that? And stories are powerful, right? I heard something really interesting last week from one of the stewards of the art of hosting, Mary Alice Earther. She was speaking about the story of workplace, which we've been hearing, is very masculine, which is very competitive, and women tell stories in a different way. Uh, when I say women, I should say more feminine. Feminine stories are around collaboration. Uh, so there's like there's two narratives about competitive and collaborative, and we need to shift our all our stories towards that collaborative. And I mean, that's probably you should probably interview her for for knowing more about this. But it really appealed to me because I realized that's been my own journey as well. Moving from a very competitive childhood. Everything is so competitive in India with everything, and coming to Europe, and over time realizing I love being working with other people. I love the fact that I don't know everything, but there are other people out there who know stuff, who are so smart, who can get things done, which I don't
Yeah.
understand at all. I'm so glad and so grateful for that, right?
Yes.
So yeah, why would I want to know everything? I don't.
Yeah, I had the same experience. It's like you're brought up to think that you need to know and be everything and just take accountability for everything, but it's just so much more freeing to know that you don't have to know all of that, right? And you also, when you do that, you give others the space to take accountability as well, and it's, you're not just in it by yourself alone. So
And
yeah, and it's very,
innovation happens, right, from that.
sorry.
Because and innovation comes through that, because a different perspectives, unexpected stuff comes in, you know.
Exactly. There's actually something we do as a part of, transformation journeys of teams, but also of organizations. One of the practices that I found really just mind blowing is this thing called, what we call voices of the system, where we have an hour, 90 minutes, and we bring people together from all parts of the organization or even outside the organization, like customers and other stakeholders, and just have them tell stories while the leaders, all they're doing is they're listening. They're really just listening with empathy and an open mind. And people are just sharing their stories of what's bothering them, what they're enjoying, what's hurting them, what's not. And the kind of insights that emerge from just that storytelling, there's no data report that can match that level of insight. And it's just such a powerful session. That I think is, yeah, it just changes the game. You just see things that you don't normally see in your organization.
Yeah, I love stories, and I also, one of the storytelling tool with the art of hosting is very much also looking at listening lenses. You have the 7 listening lenses, and when you are doing storytelling in such a facilitated, hosted way, and you offer audience a listening lens, you in fact start to gather other intelligence which you otherwise would not uh, have gotten back. So there's like even deeper layers of stories you can access by using this kind of hosted tools.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that in action. So I've started that also on the conscious business, bringing people in and just telling stories, but then offering the listening lenses so that uh, we can unpeel it and unpack it in an even different, deeper way.
And then before we let you go, maybe there's a final question or a final statement that I would like you to answer, um, is this. So when I drop my armor, dot, dot, dot.
um, when I drop my armor, the love shines more, and it helps other people to drop their armor.
Ah, that's really nice. Great. Thank you so much, Mansi. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, I wish you a very good day.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. And hope to get to know you more.